Nowadays, every second car we drive or third car we drive seems like it's an EV. It's almost like the EV age, it's upon us, but this is no ordinary EV. It's got a lot riding on its shoulders. Hi, my name is Dhruv Paliwal, you're watching autoX, and today we're driving the Mercedes-Benz EQS 580 4MATIC. Now before we get started with the video, if you like the kind of content we make and if you want to see more of it, we recommend that you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you've hit the notification bell so you're updated with the latest content as and when it comes out. And obviously, like the video, share it with your friends so that they too can get to watch such awesome automotive content. Now obviously design is subjective, but this is a Mercedes-Benz and an electric at that. So we have to talk about design a bit, and frankly I like how the front end looks. It's big, it's chunky, but it's low down, so that sense of visual mass, it's not quite a lot. It's not a lot of bulk staring you in the face, and I think the dimensions have also been kept in a manner where it's a big car but it looks slightly small. And even this front end, I especially like this piano black cover here, which has taken the place of a traditional grille in an internal combustion engine car, and how this logo, it gives this 3D look like it's staring you right in the face. It reminds you of old Merc cars, and that's a really nice touch. And as you start moving towards the back, I like how they've done this coupe-like silhouette. It's very taut, it's very tight, and it gives the appearance of a stretched out limousine. But as you move towards the back is where the problem starts for me. I think the boot just looks like it's been done up in a rush. I think they've run out of space. It doesn't look like the sloping roofline that's coming down is integrating really well into that third box of a sedan. But that's my two thoughts. What are your comments about the design of this EQS? Let us know in the comments box below. Now we are inside the cabin of the EQS, and let's start with the first row. There's a lot to talk about here, so get your popcorn out. I think first I'll start with the fact that in typical Mercedes-Benz style, there is opulence in here. There's a lot of premium materials that have been used, there's a lot of colors that have been used, and they really liven up the cabin. I mean, this white upholstery, yeah, you might be thinking, how am I going to keep that clean? But it looks nice. This cream color dashboard, this veneer, this wood veneer finish over here in the center console, all of this just add that extra bit of magic to the cabin, and you really feel special sitting inside. That aside, Mercedes has, I cannot utter these words, but used hard plastics in some places. Some of those are at the back, some of them are right here. This touch point, this indicator stalk over here on behind the steering wheel, it makes use of hard plastic, and I for the life of me cannot understand why that's been done, because apart from that, this knurled finish here on this dial, on this stalk, is really nice. It's really special to touch, but this base, it's made of plastic. Yeah, that's a compromise. It's a little bit hard to digest because of the fact that this is an expensive car and you do not expect these kind of cost-cutting measures to make themselves apparent over here, but that's the case. Apart from that, the biggest highlight of this interior, of this front row especially, has to be this triple screen layout. I've got one screen in front of me, I've got one screen here in the center, and I've got one screen in front of the passenger. Now obviously the screen in front of me, that's the instrument cluster. It shows me the speed, the amount of power that the electric motors are using. Apart from that, it obviously gives me all the warning signs and everything. But pretty much everything that you have, your navigation, your phone, your music, everything can come onto the screen in the center part, and you can use all of that by these controls over here. Special mention to these controls, we've used them before also in Mercedes-Benz cars. They're really nice, they're really intuitive to use. I was not very keen on them, but once I used them, yes, I have to say they're really good. Second all, let me come to this central screen. Now this is the party piece of the EQS. Every vehicle function can be accessed through this screen, and that means everything, your modes, driving modes, your phone, your navigation, your vehicle settings, racing the vehicle, lowering the vehicle, everything, you name it, it's here. And the thing is, everything is so huge here that you do not miss anything. Even when you switch on Apple CarPlay, it takes the whole of the screen. What that actually does is, if you want to reach out to something that's in the corner over here and you have a laid back driving style like I generally prefer, you tend to have a bit of a problem reaching that end of the screen. But I mean, for the size of it, I will let that slide. Apart from that, this screen here is again used for the same purpose, but this is for the passenger, so that when there's a passenger sitting next to you, they don't get bored. They can pair their own phone, they can connect their own phone, they can select their own music. There's a lot of stuff like that that can be done, and honestly, it's a good thing, because otherwise, whenever, if you think about it, a passenger comes and changes something on the screen, it kind of takes away some attention of the driver from the road to see what they're doing. In this case, at least, well, you're aware that whatever they're doing is on their own screen. Also, if there are sensors inside this car over here that will detect if you're looking at that screen, and certain content will be dimmed out so as to not to distract the driver, which is a really nice touch. Apart from that, obviously you've got all these center console storage spaces here. There's a wireless charging mat that's in here. You just place your phone and shut this. There are two cup holders, there are two Type-C charging sockets in here. Then there's also this entire control pad here in the center. Now the start stop button for the car is here. Your hazard button, it's here. Basically it lights up all your indicators. Apart from that, here you can select the camera, you can press the EQ button, which will bring up the range and everything related to the electronics, the electricity present in the battery, the charge present in the battery. It will bring it up here on screen. Then you have this on-off button, which can basically be used on off the screens, and there's a mute button and a volume. So everything that you would need at your fingertips is right here at your fingertips. But the problem is, and I think it's a quality issue rather than a user interface issue, anywhere you press on this, it feels like this entire pad, it moves. You can press it anywhere and it will move, but it will only register a function when you click on top of a certain bit. Like if I'm pressing dynamic here, that's the driving modes, it's only then that it's going to register that input. Now I don't have a problem with clicking on that one specific thing, but if you click anywhere else, it's pressing, and the kind of tactile feedback I'm getting from it feels a little cheap. It doesn't feel very Mercedes-Benz. Yeah, that's kind of not digestible. Then there's again one deep storage box here. You've got another two Type-C USB ports inside. You can put your stuff on charging. Apart from that, you've got two Type-C type ports down here with a huge storage space, so you can probably keep your iPad and even charge that. So right here in the front, you have 6 Type-C USB ports. I don't know what you're going to do with them, but yeah, well, they're there. Apart from that, you have this huge sunroof here for the driver. The seats, they're very comfortable, they're well bolstered. Obviously, we don't even need to be talking about these in a Mercedes-Benz, because that's one of the mainstays of a car like this. So I think now it's time to head to the back. Now we are in the second half of the cabin, and I think this is generally not where we focus a lot of our review on, but in a car like this, you can't get away without not talking about the back seat. So let's get started. Okay, first things first here, this car seems to be drawing its inspiration from the S-Class. That's why the EQS. And for that, the rear seat size, it's small. There is no other way to put it. These seats, they're not too long. The seat base, it's not enough to give me proper under thigh support. And that's something that I would not want in a car like this if it's even close to the S-Class in any way possible. Apart from that, let me get out one more negative out of the way. The hard plastics that I talked about, see. These, I mean, yeah, I know this is a part that I would never touch, but the driver will when they use this button to adjust the headrest. And that's where the experience is a little bit lacking. Then the sunroof here, this one obviously doesn't open because it's at the rear. It's also slightly smaller. Honestly, it doesn't take away from the experience. I don't mind that there's this bit long pillar here right in the middle. I'm sure there's a beam running through in there, which is actually adding to the structural integrity of the car. But Yeah, you have seen other panoramic sunroofs which give you a much more clearer view than this one. So maybe people would find that lacking. Apart from that, these lights here, a really nice touch. You have ambient lighting running all throughout the cabin. At night, it looks really awesome. You can configure it, you can do different colors. You have these AC vents on these B pillars, and this car has 4-zone climate control. So each corner of the car can be cooled according to whatever the requirement of the person sitting in that corner. Yeah, there's some opulence for you. Apart from that, materials used everywhere apart from the hard plastics, they're really great, really nice to touch. The buttons feel really nicely clicky. Like it's the nice kind of click where it just makes for a very nice user experience. The Burmester 3D surround sound system, we've seen it in other Mercs. It's not the best system we heard, but for a car in this category, it's obviously giving you a very rich clarity when it comes to sound. And you know what? That's pretty much about it. There's not a lot to talk about here in the back half of the cabin, which only tells us one thing, that this EQS, it's primarily designed for people who are going to be sitting in the front and going to be driving this car. One last thing, you have this armrest over here. Very nice armrest. Obviously this headrest doubles up as a support for it here. You've got it at the perfect angle. You press this, inside there are masks kept right now, but this is a wireless charging tray. So again, you have a wireless charging tray here for you. One more thing here, you have a tablet that basically gives you control over functions of the car. First of all, it's a Samsung. Now I don't have a problem with Samsung, but at least they could have covered this up. I mean, I don't want to be looking at these Energy Star ratings and these tags that are there behind the tab. So that's one point taken away from Mercedes-Benz, because they were not attentive enough. It just feels like this tablet has straight been taken out of the packet, your MBUX software has been installed on it, and it's been kept back here. And second of all, the Android on this is probably 7-8 years old. I mean, I don't need to tell you, this is a car which is the epitome, the pinnacle of technology when it comes to electric vehicles right now. It's got so much going for it, but there's a tablet in here which, I mean, this has not been designed by Merc, obviously, so you can't directly fault them for that, but why would they want such a product? I mean, this car is not like they're trying to save cost everywhere, right? It's an expensive car, so fine, I'd pay for a good tablet, design a tablet, put in there that at least enhances the experience instead of taking away from it. Apart from that, I think there's not a lot to talk about here at the back, because I think the focus of Mercedes-Benz has been in the front half of the cabin, has been in delivering a solid driving experience. So I think we should go check that out next. Alright, let me give you the headline numbers before we start. This car has a 107 kilowatt hour battery pack. That means 857 kilometers of range according to ARAI. Then you've got 2 electric motors, one on each axle. Total output is over 500 brake horsepower. Total torque is 855 Newton meters. All of which means that when you put your foot down, this car goes like very fast. And before we start breaking the speed barrier, let's just quieten things down, and now I would like to tell you about what this is like to drive. I think first of all, the amount of space I have here around me is one of the things that is like really nice about this car. You have acres of space around you, but still, like, everything else apart from that one corner of the screen seems to be within grasp. The steering wheel, I think the materials used, obviously you don't even want to talk about them here, but really nice, because you're going to be touching this all throughout. The one thing I like about these cars is that Merc has gone back to their old ways of putting the transmission selector over here behind the steering wheel instead of in the center. And I really like that, because once you get used to this format, it's really convenient to use. Apart from that, you have got 3 driving modes: Eco, Comfort and Sport. Now obviously when you're in Eco, everything apart from your powertrain is in Comfort mode, but your powertrain goes into Eco mode. You don't really save a lot on battery, but it's the responses, they are dulled down a little. Obviously I was experiencing this, that by the time I reached 80, if I wanted to go further than 80, then my throttle input needed to be a little more than what I would generally do in comfort or sport. But apart from that, Eco is very usable. You could put it in Eco and still make fast, quick overtakes. Comfort, as it sounds, is comfortable. I think the power delivery in that case seems to be really, really nice, seems to be tuned for both, for making sure that you're not using too much energy and for keeping things comfortable inside the cabin. That's one of the hallmarks of a Mercedes-Benz car. So apart from that, you have sport mode. Okay, in sport mode, yes, things do liven up a little. Your throttle response becomes a little sharper, your steering firms up a little, your suspension firms up a little, and your ESP also gets dialed back a little. But the ESP you will never notice, because even in comfort mode, to get the ESP to activate, you have to be really foolish, which you wouldn't be with a car this size or this heavy or this costly. And apart from that, yes, the firmness of the suspension and stuff like that, you can feel a little, but not a lot, and it's not bothersome. The ride still remains plush. I think the ride of this car is one of the highlights, is one of the reasons why I think this is one of the most comfortable cars I have driven this year. That's the drive modes, obviously. Now let's come to the steering, and the brakes, they feel a little vague, but that's to be understood because obviously everything is right by wire over here. The brakes, they do give you a lot of pulsation sensations, a lot of what's happening underneath, but that's also to do because the system's been tuned in this way that this car can brake by itself. And it actually happened a couple of times with me where the system, I forgot to turn off collision avoidance, and in Indian conditions, anything if it crosses ahead of you, if it crosses across like this, it brakes very, very suddenly. And honestly, rather than saving you at one point of time, somebody will be coming from behind and they will come and crash into you because the braking is so sudden. So I found it better to just turn off that setting. The one thing was that I'm having to turn off the setting every time I switch off the car and switch it on. So if there's a permanent way to fix that, that would be really, really nice. But if not, then you're going to have to be very careful while driving this car. Another place where you'll have to be very, very careful while driving this car is the ground clearance. It's super low. The number will be on your screen, but I can tell you this by experience, 50% of the speed breakers, say 40% of the speed breakers that I have driven over in this car has scraped one way or the other. And that, I mean, for an expensive car, yes, I'm sure there's a lot of protection down there, but it just doesn't feel nice. It makes you cringe on the inside, which is not a very good feeling. Apart from that, we have obviously lane keep assist. There's a lot of ADAS features on this car, but we've not really had the time to use them, to be able to talk about them. Yes, we have used them. They seem to be, it seems to be a good system, but I would reserve my comments for when I have more time with the car and can tell you about it in much more detail. Last but not the least, I must tell you about the rear wheel steering, and that's the thing here. This car seems like it's a big car, but it drives like it's a small car. If you try and maneuver it in steering, if you try and park it into spaces, it very easily slots in, and you actually compensate so much that you end up doing it wrong for the first couple of times. Then you realize that the rear wheel steering is basically the rear wheel steering is that the rear wheels, they turn in the opposite direction of the front wheels, essentially shortening the wheelbase and making it easier to turn a car. Out on the highway, when you're above a certain speed, the wheels turn in the same direction as the front wheels to enhance stability. So that's there, and this really, really helps. But the one thing that this car cannot hide is its weight. Even the weight of this car is really well masked right up until the time you start braking. If you're braking from high triple digit speeds and if you dead brake, you can see smoke coming out of your wheels, which means that you need to keep driving to cool the brakes down. That happened with me once. Apart from that also, I think this is a luxury car, not a sports car at the end of the day, so I wouldn't complain about this. But yeah, if you be careful braking from higher speeds, because the brakes do tend to heat up, and it's when you are braking this car is when you feel all of that weight come to the front, and it's when you feel that this is a big car. Apart from that, it doesn't feel like a big car because it corners like a relatively large sedan, not something this big. Apart from that, I think there's no other place where you feel the weight as much as when you're braking. And with that, we come to the end of the driving experience of the EQS 580. Alright, time has come to sum up this video, and I think I can be very clear in what I want to say. As an electric car, this car is close to being flawless. The range anxiety question is knocked out of the park. I've been driving it since yesterday and I'm still at 62% charge, and I've been driving it quite a lot. So that should tell you that the range anxiety bit, that's taken care of. When you talk about features, those are there quite a lot, enough to make any kid happy. But when you start making comparisons to the S-Class is where I am let down a tad bit, especially because of the rear seat. I think the rear seat is a little too small for my liking or for anyone's liking. That could have been slightly bigger. There is room in front of you, but the seat is small, you have less under thigh support, and that makes it not so comfortable. Apart from that, there's hardly anything you can fault about this car. There's a lot of luggage space. Yes, probably the only grind here will be the fact that it's got really less ground clearance and you'll pretty much scrape anywhere you drive. So if you can live with that low ground clearance, then well, by all means go buy this car. That was all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next one, goodbye.